welcome to episode 850 of Just Joshing. I know I've done this for a long time. I'm almost a professional, Marci. Don't tell anybody, like
My lips are
nobody.
sealed.
That's right. Nobody knows except maybe anyone listening to this, right? So my guest is the one and only Marci Warhaft. Her title, what was it? Soccer mom, from stripper to soccer mom, or
No,
no.
The title of the book, jeez. The title of the book is, I have to think about it for a second. It's The Good Stripper, a Soccer Mom's Memoir of Lies, Loss, and Lap Dances.
Yes. So there you go. There you go. Right.
I know. I have it. Look, I should just.
You should show it. You should show it on the air. That's right. The Good Stripper.
There you go.
Yep. So I like the title. It's got a nice little irony to it. So
yeah, it's, you know what though, it's a little deceiving because it's not. I only stripped for a few months. That wasn't so it's not a story about a stripper, but that is part of my story.
Oh sure. I don't honestly judge. When I was in college, when I was in college doing journalism. And actually, it's probably a good thing because I dated some long-term strippers. It can do things to people after a while. I've seen that too. I may imagine. Wow, we're starting in a dark place, but that's okay. We'll get back to something happy. But no, I honestly, this is what I found. Most of the people that did that were some of the sweetest people I ever met. But because of the nature of the environment they ended up being a part of night in, night out, it catches up to you, and you have to develop a certain kind of skin to kind of level out while you're there. And again, I've seen some stuff. It's just like, yeah, this is not a long-term career for anybody, I don't think. But I get why people do it too. It's an experience, number one, and number two, it's the money is decent, can be decent. So depending on where you go.
Yeah, just to be very honest, my story is very different because it's very, very different. And when I say, it's funny because when I clarify and I say that I didn't do it for years and that it's a small part of a big story, I don't say that because I think there's anything wrong with it. And it's not that I want to distance myself from it. It's more that I don't want to misrepresent myself. I don't want people to think like, oh, she's saying that she did it for. It's more of like, it's that, like, it's more of a respect for them, you know? No, it's just that that's it's important for me that it doesn't seem like I'm looking down on it. And I came into it very strange, like it was very differently. I was married. I had 2 little kids. Yeah. And it wasn't, you know what, that's the thing too. Like the whole narrative is like, you know, in a lot of movies, so she's a drug addicted single mom with daddy issues. Like that's what the unfortunate stereotypical in a lot of movies, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not my story at all, you know. And it was, in fact, the craziest thing is at the time I was dealing with a lot of stuff. So I'll tell you this, because my story is crazy long, but
go ahead.
Basically,
we got time.
But I started off, you know, I had a really normal home. I had everything that I needed as far as I felt loved and supported. I was the youngest of 3. And then I was very, very opinionated and very outspoken. And I danced and I played sports and I had big dreams. And my mom was great. And she used to tell me I could do anything and I had a voice and the right to use it. And she used to tell me I was beautiful, but that I was smart. And that I remember my favorite compliment she ever gave me. I was really little and she used to have friends over for coffee during the day. And she said that she would love it when I'd walk in and they'd be talking and I would share something. Like she said she really appreciated my opinion. And that was fantastic. When I was 10, my parents got divorced. My father was not great. And, you know, wine, women, and song, except exchange the song for drugs. And he took off, and that wasn't great. But the rest of my family got closer. I was very close with my mom and my brother, who was 5 years older. So I was good. Like I was really good. Yeah. When I was 17, my life changed because I had just gotten into a really prestigious theater school after high school. Again, at the time I wasn't very close with my older sister, but very close with my mom. I used to say she was my home, my place to come home to. That's how I felt. My brother, who was 5 years older, he was the invisible armor I wore out in the world to protect myself. Like he was like the big brother, you know, like he'd stand in front of me to protect me, but he'd also kind of stand behind me, teaching me how to protect myself. So he was everything. And when I was 17, he got sick, and then he died. And he was 21 and I was 17, and I was not prepared for it. I was literally in the middle of writing my final English exam for high school when my vice principal came in and just couldn't even look at me. He just took my papers and he said, "Come with me." Took me down to the office, and a friend of my parents was there, and he told me Billy died. Was not expecting it. And that, I'm telling you, like the minute before I heard he died was the last minute I felt safe for decades, because I felt like, to me, like I knew he was sick, but he didn't seem, I think my mother was trying to protect me, so I didn't know how sick he was. And I thought, if something like this can happen to him, I needed him. I didn't think I was so great. So I thought it should have been me. And that's what I carried with me, because even though, again, my mom was amazing, and I've said that to her, even I said, if it had been me, you'd still have if it had been me, you'd have a daughter and a son. Now you just have two daughters. And she'd say, yeah, but I wouldn't have my Marci. What would I do without my Marci? So she was great, but I still felt like, no, the world needs him more than it needs me. So I felt like, oh God, I have to really earn my place here. And so that's a lot for a 17-year-old. And I felt like I couldn't be enough. And that was and it was a very tricky time. I mean, look, it's tough now as far as boys and girls dealing with sort of body image stuff that we're seeing. But even back in the 80s, I was on the cusp of like, do I look okay? Do I need to go to diet? Like this kind of thing. And I remember I'd say to my brother, do I need to go to, and I was always very fit and I taught dance, but he'd say, no, you're perfect. You're perfect. And for some reason, and I developed, when he died, I developed an eating disorder. And so it was kind of like, I couldn't control what was going on in the world. What's the one thing I could control? Was my body. That's the only thing. As a teenager, what's the one thing that I had complete autonomy over? Was my body. And so I started starving myself, and I won't get into the whole thing, but I had a doctor who really, really fucked me over with that. And I dropped out of school, and so that kind of laid the groundwork for when you have very low self-esteem. I went from being a little girl who thought I could do anything to, only wanting to be as small as possible and feeling like I could do nothing. And to go out into the rest of the world feeling like that, it sets you up for a lot, because I became very vulnerable to outside sources that didn't have my best interests at heart, and also just to life. I mean, life took its toll, because I won't get into everything, but right after my brother died, my mom had remarried, and like right before, and he told us he was a caterer and used to take me to all the places where he'd get this is where I get my fish, and this is where I get my meat. And I loved food, so he would tell me in detail what he was cooking for all the. Anyway, he wasn't. He was arrested for 47 counts of bank robbery, and
that's awesome. Yeah, I almost want to say it's awesome because you can't make that up. You can't.
I know. Like now, at the time, it wasn't so funny, but now I think it's. I think it's hilarious. They had a name for him. The police, they called him the Satchel Bandit, because he carried a little bag with him, like a satchel. And he would tell us that every 2 weeks, we were living in Montreal, which is about a 5.5-hour, 6-hour drive to Toronto.
Yeah, I know the area quite well. I live in Calgary, Alberta right now. I used to, I'm from the Toronto area. So.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah.
So we were in Montreal, and he would, every 2 weeks, he would be catering a big church breakfast. And so he would be up at like 4 a.m, and he would be like cooking all day, and then he'd be serving and then cleaning, and he'd be gone all day, when really he was driving to Toronto, robbing a bank, and driving back.
Yeah.
And the police, they had his picture, but they didn't have his name. So they were, for 2 years, they were after him. And once he got caught in the act, he was leaving the bank, and a limo driver saw him and figured out what was going on and literally chased him down, and that was that. And then we found out that, like, it is now, I think it's hilarious. Again, at the time, not so much, but we found out that he'd actually been in jail in the state. My mother had met him through friends. This wasn't like, this wasn't a Tinder thing.
No.
But no, I'm just saying. So my mother like best friends with his cousin, and he'd been living in the States, and he moved back. He moved back, we found out, because he had gone to jail for the same thing in the States. So he had to come back. And the funniest part of it for me is that what was his job in prison? He worked in the kitchen. Yeah. So that's kind of, I guess, where he got it.
Well, so about your bank, I'm going to say my bank robber boyfriend, because this might be the thing I clip, because this is just, you can't make this up, right? Maybe he missed his true calling. Like maybe he was just really good in the kitchen, but I grew up in London, Ontario, right? Which isn't too far. So I grew up around car thieves and drug dealers, right? So here's the thing. And like what I've learned in life about anything you do, it's a slippery slope. It just is. Once you get started in a particular path, it's hard to turn that momentum around until right away. Sometimes you have to sometimes go through a process. And I think that's just even ties to what, like your story to some degree too. You were mourning, you were vulnerable, and your tendency is, I'm just maybe an armchair psychologist here, probably from like probably until you truly made peace with your brother's death, which probably took you a very long time. Based on
I still haven't.
Yeah. Well, but you seem better adjusted. How about we go with that?
Okay.
Or we'll go with that. Okay.
It depends who you ask, but yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't care what if other listen. I'm 40 and slightly batshit. I've been chasing my dreams my whole life. People think I'm batshit crazy. I'm good with it. Whatever. I don't care anymore. But in your case, I imagine you were looking for that same security that you lost for a very long time. And and what I've noticed is, because I have an ex-girlfriend who's gone through some similar, like wanting to be small and wanting vulnerability issues. And what I noticed with her is the same thing, is they often what happens is you look for like the thing that protects you from the world. Usually, though, what ends up happening is, on some level or another, the people you find that do that come with a very high price tag, and it's hard, because what the only true way out is to find that worth, and that's really hard to do if you put yourself in situations where you're dealing with people who think you aren't worth anything, and that's I even though like the issues, or in terms of the decoration of that has changed in 40 years, essentially to me it comes down to the same thing, and that's this. It's self-worth. Like like I've been freelancing for 2 years. Right this minute, it sucks, because I've gone through every, like, last 2 weeks have been kind of hellish for me. But at the same time, there's going to be ups and downs. That's just how it goes. And you have to have that belief that things are going to turn around. You're going to have that belief that if you keep working out, again, that's a self-worth thing. And when you're younger, I find like when I was no different in some ways, in my 20s, you have to find that confidence, and to find it, that usually takes a lot of soul searching, but it also takes like going out there and doing things. And at some point in this process, I'm like, not just the bank rob. I'm sure you had other experiences throughout the journey when you were mourning and grieving, tons. But there came a point in your life where you were like, fuck this. Like right in that turn, like, you know what? Fuck this. I deserve better than this. But you have to come to that point, and that takes a lot sometimes, Well,
I'll tell you. So for me, I mean, that's a very, very good diagnosis, I will say, because you're right. It is that feeling of safety. Like I really, my mom and my brother, and I do talk about them a lot. I mean, they really gave me that unconditional love and that safety. So when I lost them both by the time I was 28. So, not having that armor and not having a home, I felt very alone. And at the time I was estranged from my sister, and we don't have any extended family. And I had moved, so I moved out of Montreal and I moved to Toronto. I ended up meeting somebody, getting married. And I remember we were going on vacation, and I knew he was going to propose. And I was young. I was like 22, 28, 23. And and you know, most girls are like, oh, let's get it through Bridal Magazine. And I sat with a pros and cons list, you know, and I was like, the reasons why I should, the reasons why I know, but at that point, you really should just be like, sure. But I think part of me, I mean, I had fears for so many reasons. But there was this sense of, okay, he seemed normal and good. And, you know, maybe I needed some normalcy. And so we got married but there was no normalcy. So, you know, after that, we moved to the other side. We moved to the West Coast, and I had a bunch of just problems where I had gotten pregnant and then lost the baby, gotten pregnant again, lost the baby, got pregnant again. While I was pregnant, my mom died. Again, I wasn't expecting it, like just a few months before he died. So that was another big blow, obviously huge. And then I got pregnant again, and I ended up in the hospital just with a bizarre illness. I was there for 2 months, kidney failure, respiratory failure, put on a ventilator for 17 days, given a 25% chance of survival, had to learn how to walk again, talk again, breathe again, had multiple surgeries, including a tracheostomy, which is my favorite scar. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. Well, I had a 16-month-old at home, and then what happened, and this is, okay, then I ended up having another baby. So I had 2 miracle babies. But so here's where things get strange. So I had been through a lot of loss and, you know, emotional trauma, physical trauma. Because again, I'd had a baby, and then a year later got pregnant again, lost that baby, got pregnant again. A lot is going on. And we moved back to Toronto. And at that point, my marriage took a bit of a turn. My husband at the time, I have to be very, I talk a lot in my book, but I'm very careful when I talk about it. He had some ideas for our marriage that I wasn't on board with. He really wanted to open things up, and I didn't. He had brought it up before, and I didn't want to. And listen, I've never, to be honest, I was the more sexual one in the relationship. That's never been my issue or our issue. So it wasn't like I was like being prude or anything like that, right?
It's those kind of like, I don't like, I'm just being honest with myself. I don't think I could do that. Like there's a lot of like a lot of people think when they look at sex, it's just a physical act. It's more than that. There's a genuine connection with a person. And when you open things up to the outside, you never know what you're gonna get, first off. Second, I just, you know, and this is just maybe again, this might be me being an old-fashioned prude, and I'm good with it. And this is when I say this, but if I'm with somebody I really, really love, I don't like when I've been in relationships with people I really, really want to be in, I don't even think about anyone else.
Right.
Like, it's just you're my focus. Now maybe it's because I'm obsessed, because I'm a passionate motherfucker, and that might be part of it too. But the thing is, like when I'm in a relationship, my mindset's very different than when I'm dating. Now, dating, that's a little different. That can be, you can go to have fun, and you can do that. There are pros and cons to both ends of that spectrum, right? Ultimately, it's the same thing. It's the expectations you have in those relationships. And again, personal note, this is what I have found. Intimacy tends to make things a lot more complicated for me. That's just the way it is. It's not meaningless to me no matter what. And that's just a personal, honest assessment. I might be able to do one night stands, but they're not something that's probably good for me over a long stretch of time. And that's an honest, mature perspective. Like, I'm not above it. I certainly am human, but I definitely
it's not your first choice. It's not your comfort zone.
Well, it's not even whether it's my first choice or not. I just know I'm the type of person to get attached. So if that's the case, right, I could, but it's not. I tend to lean more towards attachment. So if I lean more towards that way, I probably shouldn't. Right. So,
and for me, don't forget, I was still battling an eating disorder and
you're battling everything.
So here, and my body, like when he mentioned it, I had a baby like 8 months earlier. So, and had just had a baby like not that long before that. So my body, like, had been through a lot. And so my younger son was born in 2001. I was in the hospital, like, my family was told I was going to die in 2000. So there wasn't a lot of time there that, like, my body, that was a lot for my body to go through physically, but also emotionally and psychologically.
Mentally, like,
there's a lot of that. Yeah. And
you're fragile. You're fragile as hell and vulnerable in that moment too. And it's like, what the hell?
Hugely. Plus, I still was dealing with all of the other stuff that I've been through. So what, for me, also, him bringing it up again at that point, I felt like you don't want your partner to be overly possessive, right? Nobody wants that. But it would have been nice for me, who was dealing with sort of these self-worth things. It would have been nice to, like, the idea that he wanted to share me. That didn't feel good to me. You know what I mean? Especially since I'd almost just died. Well, you kind of want a little bit of jealous. You know what I mean? You kind of want your partner to be like, I don't want you to be with other people.
It's also, I mean, most people don't see it, like, don't look at it like this. But if you want to share your partner, there is a possession there. Now, the partner is not so much a person, but a fantasy. And there is a healthy element of fantasy in any relationship. There has to be. But if I'm dealing with an individual with thoughts, feelings, and wants and desires, then as a good partner, right, I may want certain things to do certain things with you, but A, if you're not gung-ho, then we ain't doing it, right? And if that, right, we're just not. It's just not going to happen. 2, if I put you in that position, if I absolutely put you in that position and you cave, you will resent me eventually, and you will resent yourself even more, because why did I do this when I didn't want to do this? So it's not a healthy combination, right? Now, again, there are couples, I know this too, that have open relationships and they can do it, and they have,
absolutely.
And they can do it. They have the mentality to do it. Although, again, even with what I've seen there, I mean, the one thing about polyamorous is that is a very open term, right? There's one line between polyamorous. Your first husband, your first husband sounds to me like
only husband.
Only husband. Okay. I'm just thinking. Okay, fair enough.
Don't scare me like
that. Okay, but I say it like this. It sounds to me like he didn't really value you as a person, and because he really didn't.
That's how I felt.
And I think you're justified in feeling that way, because it's not. If he's pushing in those directions, right, that speaks to me of a certain how do I put this, inadequacy in his part that he never corrected. So I say it like that because I want like I don't want any but yeah, it sounds like you were dealing with a lot. Like, you're dealing with mortality on multiple levels. You're back that you're the surviving, like you're so my dad's still alive. One day he will not be here. My grandmother's still alive. One day both my grandmothers are still alive. One day they won't be here anymore.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like I have this like illusion of that it can't happen to me. Now, I know better because of my own little experiences in life, that life is very, very fragile and can go like that.
Yep.
But you had it shoved down your throat for a very long time.
Yeah. And it's I think what had happened was, at that point, and I'm very clear to say, I was never forced into anything. It was there was a very subtle kind of asking. And then, so a therapist, I think she made it up, I don't think it's a real term, but she described what I was going through as traumatic overload. And she said it was like I'd been through so much, didn't get a chance to catch my breath with anything, that my brain was just like, no, you can't anymore. Like, there's just, you cannot take it anymore. And then it just became easier to just, okay, well, I'm not going to be loved. Anyone who loved me is gone. I mean, I had my children, but I mean, they're babies and I love them. It's more, they need to know I love them, but it's not, I'm not going to get that same, it's different.
No, it's a very different kind of love.
It's very different. So if I'm not going to be loved, but it seems like I can be desired, and I'm still going back to that 17-year-old me who feels worthless, right? It's feeling like, okay,
Yeah.
what can I do to earn my place in this world? And here I'm told, well, there's nothing you can do of value, but you can use your body sexually, and guys will dig that, and your husband will dig that. So that became sort of an escape for me. And so when I started living this double life, it was that because I had lost my mom quite young and I adored her.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had almost died when I was 29, she died when I was 28, and I was 29 when I almost died. I still have this thing of like, I don't know how long I have. I mean, it could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I was so determined that every minute that my kids had me, it was going to be spectacular for them. You know, I wanted them to feel loved and special and just every second. So that was one goal. And then the other thing was to find my self-worth. And so when we started, the first thing he asked me to do was sleep with his friend. And he picked a friend that he knew I didn't like because I think it was less scary for him. You know, I think he thought seriously, because he literally picked the friend that I every time he'd call, I'd be like, ugh, you know, and pass it to him. Yeah.
I couldn't. I just, if it got to that point, I like, it just like, that's just too weird for me. It's like,
It was terrible, but I did it. And I'll tell you, it was not a good experience. It was, and I get kind of specific in the book about some things that happened it was a big turning point, another turning point for me, where I thought, all right, this is it. This is who I am, and this is it. And then from there so what happened with the stripping? So we would go to strip bars, and I thought it was really fun. We went to one that was kind of really rowdy, and I felt like a fucking goddess, because I would go in and there really was no, which isn't great. Like, it's great. There are couples who swing and it's great because there's no jealousy. With us, there was no jealousy. And I don't know that was so good. Like, I think that was a sign, you know what I mean? But we'd go in, and our routine was that I would find a woman that I thought he would find attractive, and I would approach her, and I would give her money, and I'd send them off because I had no interest in watching. And I'd send them off. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to give her enough for 3 dances, because 2 isn't worth her time. And more than that, I mean, we're paying for a babysitter. So we had to be responsible. And then they'd go off, and then I would sit at the table and watch the dancers. And they loved me because they weren't afraid that I was going to be like sticking my hands where they weren't supposed to be. So I wasn't threatening. I was really like, it was great. And then it's funny because, so at this particular bar, they would had a thing where they would like pull women from the crowd up on stage, and it would be like to flash, and everyone's like, oh, you know. And then at this point, I had really lost my mind. Like, again, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, because I'm gonna jump for a second. So we started swinging and going to swinging bars, and so kind of sleeping with other people, but like he was still there, we were there, and it was very odd. But
it was over. It was over. Whether you guys realized it or not, it was over.
No, it wasn't. So at the same time, but I'm, because of my body image stuff, and I was I say I was in fantastic shape, but I looked like I was in fantastic shape, but I was not eating or sleeping. It's like, it wasn't healthy. But you know, if you're going to be showing your body, you're not going to be eating, you know.
Yeah.
So, but at this point, I was getting so much. Wasn't real validation, but I was getting something from the attention. So we'd go to the strip clubs, and, you know, all shy, and they'd bring me up, and I'm like the only one who's like, take it all off, like, whatever, you know. And I would just like, and I got it really good. Like, I got attention, like positive, negative, whatever. It was feeding something, right?
You could see your impact. The other aspect about, like, going back to the swinging thing just for a quick second before we go forward, the other thing about what he did there too is he basically, again, you're a pretty desirable woman, so why isn't he desiring you? It's in the back of your head. You said, well, if he did desire you, why is he sleeping around with everybody else under the sun, right? But like I said, your ex had issues. We're really, but like that's
well, and it's funny because he didn't. I think that. One thing that used to, and he'd probably disagree with this, but one thing he'd say is that it was easier for me to get laid than it was for him to get laid, you know? And so I don't think he liked that, because what happened was, okay, so here's what happened. So at first, there's two things going on here. So, again, I'm dealing with my body stuff. Now, I was in fantastic shape, but I started going to a new gym, and one of the trainers there said to me, "Oh, I can get you to look like a fitness model in 6 weeks or whatever." Mm-hmm. And so I was like, "Oh, I wonder if I can, do that." And
oh yeah.
So of course I wanted to do that, but that's cost money, right? Personal trainers cost money, and I wasn't working. Had 2 toddlers, and so my thing was, okay, so I don't want to take money from the household. I would have felt very guilty taking. And I was somebody who, let me tell you, I've had 4 manicures in my life. Maybe I go to the hairdresser once a year. I don't buy jewelry. I don't shop. So I wasn't like a wife spending money on anything.
Yeah.
But I still felt guilty because I wasn't bringing money in to use household money. And my husband, he had a good job, but so I thought, okay, so what can I do what kind of job can I get where I'm with my kids all day and can make money? So, not many soccer moms go, "Oh, I'll just strip." So, and he drove me to my audition. It makes me laugh when I say that.
It's kind of funny. It is. It really is.
Really funny. So what happened was I freelanced. So it wasn't like I was there all the time. And, so very different from people who have to be there all the time. But so this was the thing. I would be with my kids all day, and then put them to bed. And then I would drive to the club and I would dance. And then I would leave around 4, get home around 4. And then I would change into my workout stuff. And then I would go to the 24-hour gym and I would work out. And then I'd come home and I'd take a shower, and then I'd get up with the kids, and I could go 2 days without sleeping. And by the way, I wasn't taking a drug. I wasn't drinking. I was probably the only dancer who had a protein shake in her locker.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I speak from just so my dad's a naturopath, and so so when I was in Windsor, living in Windsor, Ontario, where I met the stripping environment there, like one of the big things is the girls are always looking to slim down, keep themselves slim. So they would go to anything they could find to slim down. The correct thing to do, if you are going to use your body as a business, right, you have to take care of it. Right. So you actually technically, although sleep, I'm sure there were days when your kids went to school, you're like, oh, thank God, recess. Right. But I mean, yeah, because you're tired, right? That is a tiring schedule. But the fact is, your job, the last part of your job was you worked out and you took care of your body, and it actually in an odd way helped you recover. Right.
I can't say that, because honestly, I just didn't stop. It wasn't okay. Like, I didn't need to be working out. I didn't need to belong to 2 24-hour gyms because one had the audacity to close on Christmas or like a little bit early on Sundays.
Okay, maybe that's fair.
I would walk to my gym at midnight sometimes if I felt I ate something that I shouldn't have, and then walk back at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
No, it was bad. Yeah, and I wouldn't sleep for 2 days. It was insane. But I was so. I looked fit, and I was living this lifestyle. I always say I was fueled by trauma. So, I knew at 11 or at midnight, okay, time for my protein shake, and drink my shake, and then dance. And it was just so insane. So I always say I kind of went rogue. So there's always a rebellious part of me. When I was a little kid, I was a good kid though, and I would rebel in good ways. Like, I wrote a petition about my teacher when I was like in grade 2 because he was mean to the boys, and I got everyone to sign it. And he ended up apologizing, and I always stood up for things. So I wish that rebellious nature of mine at this point, it came out, but I wish it would have came out in a healthy way, because what happened was I did start to feel like he was controlling everything. When we would go to the swinging bars, he would choose who we would be with. I think he really was afraid of picking somebody that I would find attractive, so I started to feel like, and then what would happen is sometimes I would go to like a coffee shop during the day, and then I'd say to him all this, and because I would have like, a man would sit down and talk to me, and then he'd say, well, what vibes were you putting out, and so I'd think like, why is it okay? Like I felt the difference between, I think this is also a guy girl thing in a way, not to stereotype, but especially with him and I, let's say, he could compartmentalize much better than I could. So I think in his brain, it could be, okay, so she'll be Marci and mom and wife from this time to this time. And then she'll be Cassidy, which is my dancing name, or whatever, Vixen, when we're swinging. And then they were completely separated, but I couldn't do that because it was all me, right? It was still my body. It was still me. So the lines were crossing. So it was me being school mom and soccer mom, and then this kind of town vixen, but it was all me. And it was really like it was taking over. And I hate to say it, but it's true. It's that somebody, a guy would look at me in a way and kind of be inviting and give me attention. I wasn't it wasn't difficult. I wasn't much of a challenge, let's just say. And, well, and so, but just to say, so, and he knew that. So I went rogue in the sense that I was with people that he wasn't involved with. There was no cheating because he was the one that blurred the line. I didn't want to do that. And he knew, but I think he didn't want to call me on it, because if he said, I don't want you sleeping with other people, and I said, well, then let's not do that at all. Let's just be you and me. And he didn't want that, right? So it's kind of like, fine, I'll accept the other behavior. So I wish, when I talk about the rebelliousness, I wish that feistiness would have said, this is not good for me. Like, stop the situation and get myself healthy and out of it. Instead, I was like, you want to control me? Well, I'll show you how bad I can be.
Can I offer an outside commentary on this? Because honestly, I understand it. And and by the way, the only thing I'm going to slightly disagree with you is I couldn't compartmentalize like that either. Right. I think my honest opinion of your ex, just based on this conversation, says he never should have gotten married. That's my honest commentary. He wasn't ready for it. And I think a lot of his behavior towards you was so he could get whatever those impulses and desires he had inside him out. Mm-hmm. Problem was he was a hypocrite, big ass hypocrite. And so this is the thing, when you at the time like I told you, once you go down a certain path for so long, it's hard to stop. So what inevitably happens, what I think inevitably happened there was, we all have this like line inside ourselves where it goes, this is wrong. Not like it's not necessarily, and everybody, it's a little different. But when you're around something when you're living a lie, essentially, and that's what you two were, or at least you were living a lie to yourself, eventually you got sick of it. Mm-hmm. Like, you just got sick of it. So you started to rebel. It's just it's human nature to do that, right? You hit your breaking point somewhere along the way. Mm-hmm. And once you hit it, there was no going back for you. Now, did it come out in the healthiest? Did it come out in the healthiest ways?
No.
Maybe not. But at the same time, But at the same time, sorry.
No, I was just to say, so, but the problem was, I did feel it wasn't, oh, I'm like, look at me, I'm so popular. It was, I did feel horrible, and I felt like a terrible person. And, but what happened was, I think I kept doing it. You get to this point where I kept doing it to prove to myself how terrible I was. It was I always say, because I was still abusing myself with food. I was starving myself or binging on it. And I say I used sex and food in the same way, where I punished myself. I abused myself with both. And I also say that I was, at the same time that I was hyper focused on my body, I was also completely detached from it, and it was just kind of me watching myself. And I would look, I swear to you, I remember one day literally looking at myself in the mirror and saying out loud, who are you? Like, I really did not recognize myself. And so for me, what changed was I'll tell you this. I mean, I talk about it in my book, but there was one day when, this was a very long time ago, this all happened. We're talking over 50 years ago. So this was when, no, but the reason I'm telling you this is that there were no phones with internet. Like, I would go into my basement in the morning before I went to the gym at 5 a.m. on the family computer and checked my emails before I went. And one morning I got up and I had 3 emails. It's like a movie. 3 emails from 3 partners of people I had been with. And, you know, I kind of realized I realized in that moment, oh my God, like, go ahead. I was gonna say, I was hurting other people. Like, I didn't even realize that there were other people involved with other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I knew that I didn't care what happened to me. I felt like whatever happened, I deserved. But then I realized, oh my God, I'm hurting other people. And there were people going, you know, and people found out whatever. So, and that was like a slap in the face. And I felt, I mean, I felt sick with myself. And I said, I can't, I'm done. The minute I realized I was hurting somebody else, I couldn't do it. And I remember I went upstairs and I was bawling my eyes out. And I told my husband, and I will not say here what he said, but I will say that it was not, I was expecting him to be angry. I was expecting him to be actually more like condescending. Like, I will tell you that I was bawling and I got into bed and he turned and he said, what did you do? And I sort of told him that I'd been with these people. I will just say that his response was not kind. But I can't even say. I just felt, oh my God, I am just good for sex. Like, it was just not a good thing. But I called it my therapist at the time and I told him what happened. He said, you have to stop all of it. The dancing, the swinging, everything. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, we're done. Like, I can't, it's killing me. Like, I can't do this anymore. And he said, okay, until that weekend came. He's like, do you want to go to the club? And I said, no, I don't. And he's like, well, we can just watch. And I'm like, no. So the weird thing is, we really did stop everything. I ended up going into a recovery program for my eating disorder. And I completely changed everything, mm-hmm. right? I changed things around and I got healthy emotionally and physically. Our marriage was back on track in the sense that we had these 2 babies that we adored, mm-hmm. both very involved with. And I did carry resentment for stuff that had happened, of course. But I also felt that I'm lucky that, you know, I still have my family. Like, I still blame myself for a lot of it. When you're in it, you don't see, I didn't see that, mm-hmm. how vulnerable I was. So I felt like I didn't deserve better. And I actually I got out of the eating disorder program. My kids were in grade school. I didn't like the messages they were getting about weight and health. And you know, at the time, this is back in Facebook was just coming out. So there wasn't any kind
early
of body
2000s.
positivity. Yeah, it was like 2007. And I became a very outspoken advocate for body image and self-esteem, especially with kids. And I ended up speaking at schools and I created a program called Fit versus Fiction. And I became the go-to in the news. Nobody was talking about it. You know, there wasn't any body positivity or anything at the time. And I would see something on TV, you know, on a Canadian show that I didn't like that they were saying. And I would call them and they'd invite me on. And then I'd be on the radio and I was in the newspaper and I was that person. And it was great, except that I never dealt with the shame over the things that I had done. And mm-hmm. so there were times, and I say this in my book too, I remember I had just been at a school doing a presentation, doing a workshop, and I'm walking through the grocery store with my kids, and this man walks by and he kind of looked at me, interestingly, to the point where my son said, why is he looking at you like that? And I thought, either he thinks he knows me or he's trying to flirt with me. Did I have sex with him? Like, you know, did I dance with him? Like, serious. And it had been like 10 years. It had been a long time. Mm-hmm. But there was and I had this horrible fear. Oh my God, what if the truth comes out? What if my kids find out what I did? And what if their friends make fun of them? And what if I'm speaking at a school and somebody finds out and a parent, like, it was horrible. And mm-hmm. that kind of set me back. And I realized that, and I still wasn't in a loving relationship. I mean, he's not a bad person and good father and all that. And we're amicable. And so I'm not, whatever. But I still felt unbelievably unloved, and was honest about that. And then I went through another kind of illness, and I completely forgot I had to have part of my liver removed. Like, I had more, completely forgot about it. It's a more major health issues that I got through, you know. But it set me back in the sense that I started to feel, again, that feeling of unworthiness. And I thought, I can't keep talking about self-esteem if I don't have any. And I took this really big fall. And I spent a couple of years feeling like I don't deserve to be here again. I slept on the couch for 2 years. I would wake up in the morning and I would sleep on the couch, and my kids, the way we lived, we had a townhouse and their rooms were upstairs, and the couch was against the wall. And when I'd hear them get up, I'd jump up and move to the other side of the den so they wouldn't see that I slept on the couch. Like this, like 2 years. And then I would be crying, but I would like fix myself when they got up, and I would drive them to school and say to myself, okay, at some point, like laugh at something, at some point, sing to something on the radio. Like, don't let them see how sad you are, And I did this for a couple of years. And, there were times when I would drive home after dropping them both off at high school and see the overpass and think, what if I turn my wheel a little bit to the right? What if I press on the gas a little bit? Like, would it be fast? Would it hurt? Would everyone be better off without me? And I thought, well, my mother's up there, my brother's up there, my father was there by that time. I mean, we could reconcile. I had a baby up there. Like, maybe I was done. And then there was a day when I was at the grocery store, I dropped them off, and I bought all this binge food to binge on. I was going to go home and watch a bunch of episodes of Top Chef and cry until it was time to pick them up. And I met a woman at the grocery store who worked there. And she made a comment to me about how I've always got this light in my eyes. And I'm like, who is she? What is she talking about? But she said I was like luminescent. And I'm like, okay, like I'm like, what? And the amazing part, I left there so confused and crying. And I thought, oh my God, like, is there still something left? Like, is there a spark in me that I don't feel that's still there, And I thought about it, and I mean, I cried for a while. And then I thought, you know what? I'm not ready to go yet. Like, I think this isn't where my story ends. And I remember I didn't cry again for like months after that. And that's when I decided to make some changes. I didn't right away. Because again, I didn't have any support. I didn't have any family left. I didn't have anything. He was it for me. Like, that's all. And I had 2 kids. But that was the process of me thinking, wait a minute. I deserve to be, I do deserve to be happy and healthy. And that was the process. But it wasn't until I actually left my marriage about 6 years ago now that really everything took change. And that was because for the first time, that was because I wrote the book. And well, no, I left and then I wrote the book a few years later. But writing my book, what I did in that, I did everything that I was so afraid of. I wrote every secret, all of my secrets. I exposed my secrets. And my kids didn't know till about a week before the book was coming out that, like, they knew there was a book, but they didn't think it was like this. And I kind of felt like, okay, I've made it this far in my life. I have way more years behind me than in front of me. And I had lived so much of my life hiding and being afraid of the truth coming out. I would meet new people and think, like, do I tell them? How much do I tell them? What if they find out, And I didn't want to live like that anymore. And I felt like I couldn't really fully be me. And I figured I'm done. Like, I'm just done with that. I am going to stop being ashamed, and nobody can shame you if you're not ashamed. And I had forgiven myself. I realized I actually dedicated my book to anyone who's struggling to forgive themselves for the mistakes they made when they were just trying to survive. And that's what I realized. I stopped judging myself I always say it, I stopped judging myself on how I survived and became proud of myself that I survived. And that was the difference. There are things I regret, of course, but I understand why I did it. You know what I mean? I understand why I thought that way, why I felt that way. I wish I hadn't, but I feel empathy for that version of me. I don't hate that version of me anymore. And when I released the book, I will tell you that I didn't know what to expect. Like, at this point, my sister and I were close again, and she was scared that there was going to be backlash. I mean, I didn't know if my kids were going to be mad at me. They were older at this point. I didn't know what was going to, but I was ready, like I was okay. Like, if everyone turned their back on me, honestly, it was the first time in my life that I was okay with me. So I was going to be okay. And it turned out it was the best thing I ever did, because nobody turned their back on me. Everyone was more like, oh, like, now we get it. Or me too. Or, it was, or I wish I could have helped. Like, there was just, it's been such a completely different than I would have. And my kids were like, we're in your corner. We have your back. Like, it's just fantastic.
So my own little come to Jesus meeting, I'm going to say my own little personal come to Jesus moment. So these teeth are fake up here. And because there was a time in my life that I went through a very, very hard time. I survived it. But I didn't, I mean, I dealt with some of it then, but I really dealt with it when I finally went to fix the thing. I had to look in the mirror hard. And the hardest thing for me wasn't that I was the villain in the story sometimes. I'm actually okay being the villain. Sometimes it's fun to be the villain, right? Sometimes it's absolutely fun. It's also necessary. Like one of the things I've realized as I've gotten older, all the behaviors, everything we have in ourselves serves a purpose. It's finding what I find is it's serving the constructive use of that, and not I can be ruthless and I have to be, but I don't need to be ruthless all the time. Right. And not there's a difference, right? There's knowing when to be this and when not to be this. That comes with practice and age and wisdom, question mark, right? So, I mean, right, question mark, right? You make mistakes along the way, and you have to, and I think actually that's a good thing. But the hardest thing about forgiving yourself is this, for me, was this. You wish you had done something different sooner. And I think that was the hard thing. You realize how, in some ways, yeah, there were definitely decisions you could have done differently, sure. But what really bothered me, a person with my little moment, was I had to make peace with the fact that I had, like, again, I survived and I did what I had to. And it's okay that you didn't have control of some of the things that happened to you. It's okay. You're still here, and that's all that matters. Like, life's gonna put you through the ringer sometimes. It's just the way it is. Like I said, my last 2 weeks have sucked. Like, legitimately have sucked. That's part of life. I have to accept that I'm not in control. I'm in an okay place, but I'm not like where I want to be, and that's fine. I can fight and scratch, and I'll do it. I'm not really worried about it. It's just one of those like moments in life where you're like, well,
I feel you. Trust me.
Yeah. Well, fuck, right? And that's like, you don't like it's frustrating, but it's part of the process. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But forgiveness of oneself you have to acknowledge that helplessness. And I think that's the biggest, that was the hardest thing for me. I don't know. How about you? See, I somehow feel, so you're like me in the sense that you're okay being the villain. It's all right.
It depends. It depends. I don't want to hurt. Okay. So I don't want to, I'm not the villain in the sense that I want to hurt somebody who doesn't, right. No. But I will absolutely be the bad guy. Like I will look like the bad. I don't have a problem with somebody saying, okay, I'll put it to you this way. Somebody said to me, I think I posted about this, but somebody said to me at the end of a podcast, "Oh, you're a ray of light." And I'm like, well, really, it depends who you ask, because it depends, and it really does depend on what version of me you get. But I'm still me. But if you try to cross my boundaries, you better believe I'm not taking that, and I will put you in your place. However, my go-to is to be kind and compassionate and empathetic. However, so yeah, I'm not afraid of confrontation. I'm not afraid of whatever, but I think that's because maybe it's because I took so much way back when, right?
In your case, what can anyone do to you, really? I mean, honestly, right? I mean, seriously, it's like, you're gonna threaten me. I've been through all these things. If that's all you got, here's my 2 fingers. Let's go, right? That's pretty much it. Like, I know that feeling, and it's but like I said, it's just one of those things. No, you're not necessarily, like, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's necessary to be the quote unquote the bad guy. And depending on who I have to be the bad guy to, I'm not going to lie, I enjoy it. Sometimes I enjoy it more than others, right? It depends, right? It depends, right? If the person deserves me being a dick to them, I do tend to enjoy, I do put the knife. Yeah. I enjoy it. But at the same time, it's, you have to be okay, honestly, that sometimes in your story, you're not the hero. And that's a very hard thing, because you got to look at this. We have this idealized version of ourselves. And the truth of the matter is, okay, I'm going to so you have to come to terms with the fact that you don't fit that idea. And what I mean by that is, there are some days you'll maybe even exceed that idea. We all have it in us to have these absolutely incredible moments. But we also have it in us, like there are some days I just don't feel it. And that's okay too. That's okay too.
I say that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. The important thing is, every day you take a swing at the bat. I'm a big fan of I am a big fan of the Rocky movies because I think they're really good. They're a really good fundamental thing of life. But one of the best piece of advice is 1 round, 1 foot forward, 1 punch at a time. That's all it is. And that's literally it. That's literally it. Like that's all there is to it. I mean, it's simple as hell. It's hard. Sometimes it's harder than others, but it's simple as hell. You just, and inevitably all things change. At some point though, and this for me, it was the pandemic was a reminder. It's my second apocalypse. In your case, I think you got me beat on apocalypses. I think you got you got me beat. You got a bunch. You got a handful. I got like 2, right? Some of the same.
Still a lot. It's still a lot, you know. Yeah.
Oh, hey, listen. All right, but maybe. I think the difference was I think the lesson of, as you kept telling me this story, on the honest thing is I'm listening to this, and ultimately, I think you might have been happier sooner had you left your husband sooner. When did that realization hit you? Like you needed to walk away?
It's tough because for me, it's weird because I remember that day making that decision to change, but then I don't think it happened for a couple of years. So but I was also I have to tell you, at that point, again, from this little girl who thought I could do anything, at that point, I was in my 40s. I had never paid a bill in my life because I had gone from, I moved, I was living on my own, but I was young when I moved out. I moved from Montreal, Toronto when I was like 19. My mother was paying for my rent. I was working, and then I got married. And he took control of all the money. So I didn't know how to do anything. I hadn't put gas in my own car because, well, it wasn't even my car. It was the family car, because I thought I was too stupid to know how to do it properly. Like to put gas, and I remember seeing a therapist and she said, you're like a puddle of nothing. My self-esteem was so low. So to get myself to the point where I could think, okay, I could do this on my own. Because again, I didn't have parents to help me. I didn't know what the hell to do. But what happened was I felt like a pretty up person. Not all the time, but I'm a pretty, I'm someone who dances all the time. I literally dance down the street. And here my kids were seeing me sad, stressed, angry. And I thought, that is not how I want them to remember me when I'm gone. That is not what I want. That's not me. And I thought the only way that they're going to see who I really am is if I get myself out of this situation.
Yeah.
So I wanted, so it was for me, it was for them. And I knew all my life, my parents had been divorced, and I'd always heard it's better to come from a broken home than live in one. And so, I knew that that's why, had I left earlier, maybe it would have been better, but I kind of liked that my kids were older, that they were in high school, that it wasn't easy for, it was still, we actually thought it would be way easier for them, weirdly, but it still wasn't. And we were very amicable. People thought it was so weird. Literally when we signed our separation papers, I have to say, we met on our wedding anniversary. We met at a pub. We had a shot together. It's weird.
Yeah.
And we went out, and I said to him, we went out for a drink, and I said to him, I'm done. I'm done. Are you done? And he's like, nah, yeah, I think I'm done. And that was it. We decided to split, but we had gone to therapy before, and the therapist was like, I think Marci feels trapped. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't healthy for me. But actually, leaving, there's a lot of people who, you're afraid of the unknown, and it was scary. But I was more afraid of staying. For me, the leaving could be terrifying, but there was possibility to be happy. If I stayed, I knew that I couldn't be.
You were never going to be happy there.
No, and I literally walked into my bank, and I said to the woman, I understand nothing, and I need to understand everything. I said, talk to me like I'm a child. I will not be offended. Because I really was coming from, and I've had to learn. People tell me all the time, oh my God, you're so strong. You've been through. Yeah, I could go through a lot of big stuff. I'm still learning the stuff that most people just know how to do,
If it makes you feel better, I am 40 years old and I do not have my driver's license. Now, theoretically, I know how to drive a car. Theoretically, like I said, I grew up with car thieves and drug dealers. We'll just leave it at that. Right. Theoretically, I know how to drive a car, but I haven't done it. it's never stopped me from traveling. It's never stopped me from doing some things. But inevitably next year, I'm going to have to get one for what my master plan for world domination is. Right. So yeah, well, it's not always necessary, but for what I'm going to do, it's a requirement, because I think my days of living in a big city outside of are done. I think with everything, I don't know what you think about this glorious new world we're coming into, but I think if you're looking really close, you can see that there's a lot of upheaval about either happening or about to happening. And I kind of made a decision that what I kind of want to do is I want to write my books, travel, meet interesting people, get their stories, and that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And that's what I'm going to do.
Good.
Right.
See, that's the thing. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So even if it means something as simple as I already told my dad he laughs his ass off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get like one of those Mystery Machine Scooby-Doo style bands. I'm sure you remember those. Yeah. Put my podcast logo on there. Now this is where I'm going to be a bit of an asshole, but not a complete one. I'm going to have a regular horn, and then I'm going to have an ice cream music horn in the van. And I'm going to have people running down the street for ice cream. Now, here's the thing. I am going to the States. Yeah, I am going to the States, so I'm going to make sure to actually have ice cream when I do this, because if I don't,
you're gonna get your ass kicked.
Yeah. No. Down there they'll shoot me. Don't.
Right.
They will shoot my ass. They won't. Like, there are places in Canada that they'll shoot my ass. Right.
True. Of course. Yeah.
Hey, listen. If I'm going to have fun. Yeah. Well, yeah. It depends on where you go. We could have this as a little aside. I actually felt safer living in Detroit than Toronto, ironically enough. Toronto has like a weird like intensity to it in terms of like the go. Now, don't get me wrong. There are neighborhoods in Detroit. I am the wrong color. That's just the way it is. But in Toronto, it always feels like hostile. Like there's this like undercurrent of hostility in Toronto. It's always there. You can feel it, even coming into the city sometimes. So Detroit does not have that. Now Detroit has other things that's not so good, but Detroit does not have that. And so it's one of those things where I've learned like it's just like, I'm not surprised as you might think about some of the places, but let's just say, if I have fun with it, I will have ice cream. Otherwise, I will get shot, and I know it.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, you got it. Like you said, life's about like. I think the only thing I might say, I know you don't got a problem. My guess when I first saw you actually was mid to late 30s. You're older than that.
Oh, come on.
No, seriously. Seriously. No, seriously. Like you in the years since, you've done very well with yourself. Like I said, I had you mid 30s. I had you mid 30s and maybe mid to late 30s. You're older than that. You're probably what? I'm going to say mid 40s, approaching 50 kind of deal. 52? You still might have plenty of years left. Even though you're at the point where you have more behind me and in front of me, you might look. My grandmother's 86. One of my grandmothers.
I don't think I know.
You say that now. You say that now. Don't.
No, I know. Well, look, I've beaten the odds so many times. But I want to say two things. First of all, just because, look, I live in Toronto, so I'm not from Toronto. My fave, look, when I lived in the West Coast, that I love that. But I haven't felt the danger of Toronto. But I was living in the suburbs for so long. But people love it. People love Montreal. I've got a little bit of everything. Whatever. Two things I want to say. First, it's interesting because I feel when you talk about how things have been difficult and how and even when you talk about what you want to do, I feel a kinship because I feel like you said, you've been chasing your dreams your whole life, right? And I feel like you're probably similar. It's a guess, but I feel like you're similar to me in that your life could have been maybe easier had you done a traditional kind of thing. And my life, even had I stayed in that relationship or in other relationships that I'd been in that I left, of course they wouldn't have been healthy, but there would have been a certain degree of, let's say, safety, right? Or
security.
Whatever, and
security.
Yes.
Right?
So but I chose, there are times now when it's still tough. And I think like, oh my God, how does this my life? Sometimes it's like, how is this and then it's like, okay, but it's pretty fun. Like it hasn't been boring, you know? And so there's nothing, but I can't do, like, I remember my sister saying to me at some point, I remember I was doing something crazy, who knows? And she said, Marci, if you told me you were going to become a librarian, I'd be like, what is going on? Like, you know, if you told me you were doing something traditional, she'd be like, I'm terrified. But that's the thing. I think that we choose, we can't, that's just who we are. Like, yes, we could have taken easier routes, but then we wouldn't be being honest with ourselves. No?
Well, yeah, okay. Strictly speaking, from a skill standpoint,
right?
There's not much I can't do, right?
Okay.
No. What I mean by that is I can figure things out. Like I do audio, video. Like from a technical side, I do audio, video. I do graphics. I do words. I am not above learning, and what I don't know, I am not afraid to learn. Like I have never been. I have an insatiable thing. So I have always had this belief on the inside that there's nothing I can't do. Good, bad, or indifferent, I've always had
that's great.
Day.
Yeah.
That's right. So, but the thing is, like, the idea for me to get up in the morning and work for somebody else I don't feel anything for it. It feels like nothing. It feels hollow. Now, because of everything I've had to do, I may have to get a part-time job in the short term, but here's the flip side. Okay. I've talked to New York Times bestselling authors. I've talked to people like yourself. I have done like some really cool public things with my own books. I have traveled 2 continents. I've worked with my heroes. I've been through some incredible ups. My life has a million mistakes, but no regrets. I've made the decision a long time ago so I'm back in high school. I had this crush on this girl, one of my sister's friends, and I never asked her out. And I regretted it because that what if hurts far too much.
Yes, I agree.
It hurts far too much. What I've learned about, I could have done I am capable, I think, of doing a corporate job to a point. To a point, I think I can do it. It's not the work. It's not the discipline either. It's the
no, you have a desire. You have like a passion for something, and wouldn't you feel like that's my thing is I can't stay in a relationship or a job or something that that doesn't feel right. I can't do it because I hate that feeling of being trapped. I would rather keep searching for what it is that you know, even if it's not super lucrative or even if it's whatever. I can't do something that doesn't give me, you know, that just doesn't set a fire to me.
Well, somehow. No, because the other thing is, who's got time for that shit? Like, here,
a lot of people though. A lot of people are afraid.
They don't, and they don't real. This is what happens. This is because I've seen this in my own family. When my mom's side of the family had decent money. My grandfather had a job at Chrysler, which, as you know, in Windsor and Toronto, that was really good money, especially in the 80s and 90s. So he was set. My grandmother in her 80s dated, and I got to see the relationship she had with him versus the relationship she had with my grandfather. She's got now, unfortunately, he just recently passed on. It was just, which is the unfortunate part. But she's got a tattoo at 80, like 2 years old.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, but she's not the only one. There are so many people out there that spend their whole lives having these passions and never doing a damn with them until they're your age, right? Until they're your age. And they're like, what the fuck did I do with my life, right? Oh, and then as you so eloquently put, it depends on the mentality too. Some people get so caught up in that. I used to work at Pure Later Courier. That's the way. Again, now I'm not going to say it was a bad job. It was a job. Nothing more, nothing less. I kind of made it my bitch, especially through the last 3 years of my career there. I made it my bitch. I know, like I gamed the system the way I wanted it to. Like a lot of people will let a job dictate their lives. I did it the other way. I still had to do some time, but I made it in such a way that I didn't have to. I eventually got sick of it. I could have stayed. Like I'd be making $27, $28 an hour right now. I'd be good. But at the same time, I look at everybody that's there for an extended period, anywhere past 10 years. No knees, no arms. Like that's the physical toll. the alcohol some of these people haven't took to make it through that, the mentality that requires, it's not me.
Yeah.
And and I realized that I was approaching my 10th year. I honestly probably stayed about 2 years too long. After I fixed the teeth, I probably should have walked away, to be perfectly honest with you. But I stayed for an extra couple years because, again, there's a certain comfort zone. And then once you're comfortable, but what I learned was, like, I knew I was never going to stay there forever. I was there until I needed it. And I've been freelancing for most of the last 2 years. Now, the first year was, oh my God, am I going to fuck this up? This year is like, you're going to make it. There's a huge difference in my income this year because of that. You're going to make it than there was last year. Now, it's still not a living wage, which is why, unfortunately, right this minute, I am looking for something part-time because I got master plans and shit to do. And again, I'm not above working for it to do what I need to do. I'm not above working hard, but nothing's permanent in this world ever. And you and I are more aware of this than most because, again, you knocked on death's door a few times. I've knocked on it enough that's like, this is all we got. There's no guarantees for tomorrow.
Right. But well, exactly. I can't, and that's a bit of a problem that my kids will joke about. Like, I had somebody say to me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And my kids are like, where does she see herself in 5 minutes? Like, I don't plan, and that's not great, but I don't plan too far ahead only because, like, honestly, I don't know. I don't want to not live now to prepare for something a future that I might not have. It sounds morose, but it's not. It's just, I really, and yes, I would love to have a little more security and stability. However, I think for me, my comfort zone is like really outside the comfort zone. You know what I mean? And so that's, and I think, like you said earlier, it's knowing that, like, I feel like I know even when things get scary for me, because they get scary for me too. And I know that I'll be okay. Like, I don't know what that means. And but I'll be okay. And I think because there's so many times that I was sure I wasn't going to be okay, and I ended up okay, that I feel like I'll be okay. Like, that's it. I just need to, and there's just a feeling of, whatever. I always land on my feet somehow.
You're still the girl that can. Now, would you like a teensy tiny piece of advice? I'm going to ask this.
Not usually, but okay, go ahead. I trust you. Go ahead.
It is okay to set yourself in a direction, even if it changes. The reason I say that's kind of might be important for you, because I'm going to have to see. Actually, it freed me to do more crazy shit, right? So I
totally agree with you. However, this is the thing, but don't get me wrong. Like, but I do, because I'll tell you, just in the last few weeks, so I've become a resiliency coach. So I do have that kind of job. I don't do that a ton, but I do that. I also just started my own podcast, by the way. Had my first interview this morning, and that took a lot of work. And then I was just asked to be a contributor and the body image expert for a new magazine coming out. So I do have goals, and I just mean kind of, I don't, but again, so I believe me, I work hard every day to try to get somewhere. However, I don't, I can't, like, for me, but for me, the thought of, like, somebody said, oh, I created this plan, this 5-year thing, and that's like that terrified. So I have a goal and I have a thing, but for me, kind of like a sign on the dotted line for something for 5 years from now is like, what is that? Like, that I can't do, but I can work hard now for something. And if it's long-term, great. But the thought of, like, sign this contract and you'll be doing this for 10 years is like,
oh no, that doesn't. And also, I don't really think that exists anymore. I think the other reason why I've chosen freelancing too is I can see the writing on the wall. Most of the jobs that are still out there right now, they're not going to be there in 5 years. If you haven't created your own brand or company, or, like, this is the time, whether people realize this or not, this is the time to invest in yourself, right? This is the ultimate. It is the hard times that you find out exactly who you are. And don't get me wrong, there's always going to be jobs, but will you be appreciated the way you should be? And that's a very different mindset than, like, I'm looking forward to the death of the American dream as a way of life. We're right at the door. We're right at the door of that. You can see it. So now it's about who do you want to be and where do you
Right.
want to go? And if I fail the whole way, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get myself a fishing boat. I'm going to get myself some booze haul, and I'm going to get myself some ice cream, and I'm just going to, and that is.
How great is that? But how great is that? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
whole thing. That's what I said. Like when I wake up sometimes, I'm like, how did, when I was reading the audio, I did the audio version of my book and I'm reading it. Writing is one thing. Reading it and you're reading these words, and I'm like, holy shit. Because there's my editor's like, I took some swearing at. But I'm just in there, like, but I kind of go, how is this my life? But then it is this thing of like, this is a life, it's, and I mean, a lot of it's been hard and sad, but wow. And so and so when you say like, if it all fails or whatever, but like, is it a fail? Like it's just different. And I just want to hit on one thing because it's stuck in my head, but it means going back, but I'm going back anyway. It was something that you said about how that whole thing about forgiving yourself and forgiving yourself and being the bad guy. And I thought of that. One thing that stuck with me is what was very important to me was when I wrote the book, I did not want it to be a poor me book. And that's one thing I just did. I did a book club last night, and there's one thing that somebody said, and I've heard it a lot, is that I don't come off like that. Like people are like, oh my God, I feel bad, but I don't come off. But the other thing that I could have done that I refused to do was I could have left out the parts that made me look bad. I mean, there's a chapter in there that I wrote, and I wrote it through the night. I started at 10 o'clock at night and wrote it until 10 o'clock in the morning because I didn't want to stay in that chapter for one more day, because the whole chapter is me berating myself because I did shit that I'm not proud of. I could have left it out, but I thought if I'm going to be honest, then I'm going to be honest. And that means saying the shit that I'm not proud of. And that's why people are saying like I think it was important for me that I'm not bashing myself, but I'm taking responsibility. And but I do look like the bad guy, but at the same time I'm taking responsibility for that. And that was really important to me.
It accomplishes two very important things. One is you're taking ownership of your life. When you can look at yourself honestly and can say to yourself, I should have done this better, or I should have done and being open and honest of like, okay, I made mistakes here. Like whatever, like we are our harshest critics. I gotta be careful with that first line of thinking. But owning the fact that you've made a mistake is super important. It's super, 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 super important. So one of the other reasons these teeth are the way they are is it came about because I had the opportunity to work with one of my heroes. I'm not going to name names because it really doesn't matter.
Okay.
Right. Or it didn't go well, obviously, or else I'd be naming the person. Right. But,
that's fun.
Well, no, hey, listen, it's part of the journey of life. You have to, one of my lessons in life is I've had to learn how to punch back. And what I mean by that is when someone's trying to take advantage and curb boundaries, you have to go, hey, no, fuck you. No, this ain't happening. Right. And I'll do that to anybody at this point. It doesn't matter who it is. Like, right. But the thing is, right, one of the biggest things I took from this particular person was they always valued their reputation. And I think to a point that's important for sure.
Right.
But one of the things is they had never allowed themselves the room to acknowledge a mistake in how they presented themselves. And it's a very old way of thinking about reputation. The honest truth of the matter is, right? It's the honest truth of the matter is we all make mistakes and we all screw up from time to time to time. I make mistakes and I own them. But also there's stuff on my Facebook. You go back far enough, I've made some huge mistakes. They're still there. I don't judge, right? Because by giving myself that, this is me not being perfect moment, right? I have given myself also permission to screw up later because when and if I do, I've already acknowledged accountability. There's an authenticity to that people can respect. So
and
when
relate to. How do we don't like people think you have to be perfect, but that's not relatable. That's why when I started telling my secrets, people didn't. That's when people actually felt connected to me because they're like, oh wait, I've done, and that's what brings us together. So so anyone who feels that they have to put on this image that they've never messed up and that I cannot relate to that. I relate much better to people who have like fallen down, gotten dirty, had to pick themselves back up, did it again.
Fuck up right here. And it's all good.
That's it. But that's why you can have a good conversation when you've got someone who's guarded and is worried about then
So one of my favorite, like my last year peer leader. So towards the end, like they have a late policy, right? And I broke it like a motherfucker. Like I was like that one quarter, I just broke it to such a point that I knew I was going to get a note. So this is what happened. I went to my boss. I go, okay, listen, I know I screwed up, and I know you got to do your little review. So can you just do me a favor? I'm guilty, whatever. Can you just give me the note and walk out? Yeah, no problem. Right? Because again, that's respect. That I'm again, they don't care what you do. They just care that you own what you do.
Right.
So to the point that when I come in there, it's like, so I go in, he goes, okay, we've already had this talk. How do you play? Guilty as hell. My union rep starts laughing. Just starts laughing. Right? Because I'm not denying it. Like that accountability, that ownership. I have gotten away with way more shit just being that way than if I would have if I tried to deny it. And right, again, I'm not wasting time. What I realize what this is ultimately about is this, like, I've gotten to the age where it's only like there's three things that matter to me. Do I love what people I love, and do what works for me. Right? Anything else, anything that's not in those three categories, as far as I'm concerned, is a waste of time and energy. So I can't get those back. In fact, they're one of the only few things in this world that still piss me off. If you're making me waste my time, I am not I take that personally, right? That and again, maybe a little too much so, because again, if I make that mistake, then I have to call out my own shit. Well, like, yeah, I fucked up like this too. But it is one of my pet peeves. It really, really is. So I realized that, like, that's just one of my things. But at this point, that's where I'm at. Now, when I'm 50, when that 10 years from now, good God, I'm gonna be a monster.
Goes fast. It goes fast.
Oh no, it will. No, it totally. I expect it to, but at the same time, but actually, my big fear is I look at my dad. Right, I got to this point faster than he did. Right, I see where he is now. I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna be quite. In some ways, I'm going to be a better / worse monster, because in some ways, I'm far more vicious than he is. In other ways, he's far more vicious than I am. So, right. Again, just where we're different, it's how we cut you to pieces. If you right. So, right. Well, you gotta be. Again, it's one of those things. Going through that taught me how to be ruthless. Right. I don't think that's a bad thing entirely. It taught me how to take care of myself. Again, sometimes, because again, we're in the arts business to some degree too. It can be ruthless. So you have to have that skin of like, you know what? I don't like, we're doing business there. That's great. But if push comes to shove, like, I don't care who you are. We're gonna talk, or we're gonna fight. And I'm good with that. And it sounds simple. But
no, I think for me, sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
For me, what I had to learn was that it's okay to. I think I'm a pretty good person, and I think, like, for me, because I'm very accessible, like I'm all over social media and whatever, that I would get it, especially when my book first came out. I get a ton of messages from people and telling me their stories and stuff, and I respond to everybody, and I love that. But there are times when people have wanted things from me that, you know, wanted my time, wanted my expertise, wanted my whatever, and were mad if I couldn't give them what they wanted when they wanted. And I never wanted to look like I wasn't appreciative or that I was mean. And now I'm more like, I'm sorry, like, if you don't respect me, you know, or my time or my boundaries, like, I don't mind like, I'm not afraid now of looking bad to some people. Do you know what I mean? But I used to really be afraid of that. Like, I used to, but now again, because I know that I deserve, because I have self-respect, that it's easier for me to want respect from other people. When I didn't, I mean, when it was the same thing when I was in relationships, I get into relationships with people that I knew weren't right for me, but I felt like, well, I'm lucky that they, you know, with my history, I'm lucky that they want me, so I should just be appreciative, you know. And then it was when I started thinking, wait, no, I'm pretty good catch, that I was like, I'm not going to put myself in those situations anymore. And so, and again, some people don't like that, but I'm okay with disappointing some people. I'm okay with pissing some people off, because if respecting you means I have to disrespect myself, it's not going to happen.
Well, I find it's hilarious sometimes. Sometimes it's actually hilarious. So I obviously with this podcast, I have access to various PR and marketing companies too for different things as well. So a buddy of mine said, "Hey, I got a buddy that's wants to come interview for your podcast." Like, yeah, sure, why not? So this guy is a guy's own marketing PR thing. He goes, "Hey, yeah, I'll interview you, and I love to get this interview for my client." I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Because again, I'm always looking for content, right? It's just part of the deal.
Yeah.
But then he started going, "Hey," then he started doing his whole spiel for his whole company. And I didn't sign up for that first and foremost. Like, okay, it's not quite a red flag yet, but I mean, again, I'm a businessman. I'll hear a deal if it's there. And then he goes, "Yeah, but we want you to put our logo on your podcast." And I'm like, "That's a sponsorship thing, I think. I think that's sponsorship, right?" And they're like, "No, we'll trade you back." It's like, but I never came to you. You came to me. I don't think I need you. And I didn't say it like that, but that's kind of in the back of my head, right? Because I don't. So I do my due diligence and I look up the company and their clients and all that stuff just because. And one of my clients actually worked for them. So yeah, we didn't like him at all. Blah 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 blah. And it's someone I respect. So I was like, okay, but I'm not like, it's like I'm not punk. So this is what I did. It's like, okay, what would this be worth to me? And I added a little bit more because I knew they're going to say no, but let's see what they say. I'm very curious. So I sent them this really nice. It was professional. But what the rates would be for their business, right? I gave them column A, which is what they wanted and how much that would cost. Column B, which is what I have this arrangement with other PR companies and stuff like this. It's really fair. No one pays anything, and everybody gets what they want.
Okay.
And then there's option C where they don't do anything, and I figured they'd take B. They actually took C, but the reason cracked me up so much. "Oh, we thought you were a comic book podcast, but because you weren't a comic book," like, yeah, okay, sure, buddy. Like, yeah, sure. So I was amused at this because now, if that person ever does come back to me, it's triple.
Oh,
because
wow.
It's again, it's a different. And that sounds
at another time though, right? If you were just starting, you might have been like, oh, like you just want to have the content, and you may have it's live and learn, and it's a content.
Yeah, exactly. No,
well, I'll tell you, I had a very small. It was such a small little thing, but I remember just feeling so good about it. I had a thing about a year ago where these two people had approached me. They were a couple, and they were part of some big fitnessy, but like very not the typical fitness, but very. I don't know, but they would. It was this whole thing they were planning with like retreats and this whole thing, and they wanted me on board. But there was something I didn't really. But they're like, "Oh, we're going to set up a meeting to talk to the head guy, right? But we really love you on board, and we think we." So I do this. I remember being really tired that day too. When I'm tired, it's like I'm even feistier. And so we get on the thing, and the guy says, the big guy, who's telling me all about himself for like too long. Then he's like, "Okay, so I've heard about you. What can you bring to our company?" And I said, "Hold on." I said, "You asked to speak to me. What can you do for me?" Let me tell you, I've never in my life done anything like that, because even when I started valuing myself as a person, I always said I sucked at business. I was really passionate about what I did, but as far as like that, but I was like, I didn't ask for this. Like, I'm not selling myself to you. I said, and he was like, "Oh, I like you're a Spitfire like I am," and and it took him by surprise. And in the end, I wasn't interested, and I said that. But I was so proud of myself for saying. In the past, I would have said, "Oh, well, this is," but I was like, you came to me. What can you do for me? And I that was such a good, empowering, and he was shocked, and I loved that. So that's again, like, I don't know what they thought of me, but I loved myself for that.
No, because it doesn't matter what they think of you. That's not actually.
No, it didn't bother me. I was really
exactly. It's not important at all, because the important thing. I even like this with publishers now, because again, publishing has gotten in such a diverse, decentralized system. I don't care who I'm dealing business with. What are you offering me? Right? Right. What's in it for me? because obviously if you're coming to me, you have something I can do for you.
Right.
So let me, like, you know, so, okay. And if I go to them, I go in with that mentality too. I'm going to them. They're not coming to me.
Right.
So I can only make an offer. And if it's yes or no, that's all I can do. Right. And that's why cold calls suck, ladies and gentlemen, because really you don't have any leverage in a cold call. You're just making an offer. Right. That's all you can do. Right. But at the same time, because I understand that dynamic, I'm going to be like, I'm not going to be in, like I said, I'm not going to be anyone's spot. If you're coming to me, you want something. So that's fine. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? That's it, right? That's all there is to it. And again, it's a different mindset. What I find is what it does is it separates the wheat from the chaff. Who really is going to be there when it counts? Right. And that's important too, because again, people that will go through that filtering process, they're worthwhile, or at least at least there's a better chance they're worthwhile than, oh, we're gonna like I said, my favorite's like, you're not a comic book podcast. Like, oh, okay, that's fine. And like I said, that's why it's triple, because now I need you even less, because I think less of you, not more of you, less of you as a result of this. So now I'm going to treat you accordingly going forward. That's just how it is.
What you said from the very beginning is what we said from the beginning. It really goes back to self-worth, which is why when I started doing my workshops and stuff, it's hard. It's still to this day, I'll post something on social media about body image or something, and somebody will always say, it's not such a big deal. And I'm like, it's everything. It's everything. You know, I mean, if you feel like you're not worth whatever, then whether it's a relationship or whether it's a job or whether it's any kind of negotiation, you're screwed, because you've already given them the power. So I think everything comes down to how we feel about ourselves.
Yeah, that's it. And that's it. And like I said, that doesn't mean it's going to always work out. But if the last 2 years have taught me anything, it's you see who people are in hard times, right? And what do you really want? Not much else really matters. And are you willing to actually, what are you willing to do to get it? Right. Right now, there's some things you will and will not do, and that's fine. Be honest with what those are, and don't cross those lines. Right. Right. Unless something changes on the inside, don't cross those lines. Because once you cross them, as you'll attest to, it's really hard to come back from that, and it can damage you in ways that you just, right. So now things can change. Like things that you had when I left Arizona, because I was in a Mormon community for 2 years, right? Wow. That's where I was, right? I had a very different take on spirituality a little bit after that, because I realized that, like, I don't think a segregated kind of, everybody's got a different walk of life. And what I don't think is important, I think one of the most important things about it is, one of the greatest gifts we have in this world is we're all free to do whatever we want to do, whether we realize it or not, right? The question, right? That freedom's super important. It also but also because of that, none of us knows what the other shoes feels like at all. So as such, I became far less judgy. And then doing this podcast for a few years also knocked most of the rest of that out, right? Most of the rest of that's pretty much gone. But again, once upon a time, I had a stick in my ass and I squeaked when I walk. Now I don't quite. I might still occasionally squeak when I walk, but it's not quite the same. Not quite the same thing now. But it like, I know who I am and I know who I'm not. And one of the things I've learned in this life is I gotta give people the freedom to breathe and be who they are and who they're not either, right? And it may not look like me. That's cool, because really, it'd be a very boring world if it was just me.
That's what I say all the time. I mean, I hate to. I'm gonna have to go soon.
No, it's all good. No, this is.
But that's what it really comes down to. Like, you're like, I'm gonna be cliche, and I fucking hate cliches. But like, your life really doesn't have to look like anyone else's, and it doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. And your life doesn't have to make sense to me. It's as long as you're not hurting, as long as you're not going out there to hurt somebody. Then I don't care, you know, like, do you, like, really, like, I don't care. So I think that, oh God, wouldn't it be great if everyone just freaking let just live and let live. You know, I mean, it's just
that's the only way. That's the only way. That's the only way to live. Like I said, we're coming to this wonderful. We'll wrap this up, and we'll try to do this in about 5 minutes or so. That way you can go and do what you got to do. But we're coming to a point like the last like one of the worst mindsets I've seen in the last 2 years is for the good of others. There's a point of community for sure. I'm not going to say it's completely a negating thing, but I am very much reminded that usually the good of others, I've seen every time in my life, I've heard like this kind of concept of what is selfish or isn't selfish behavior. Every time I've seen that concept, it only benefits a few people at most, and everybody else suffers. The only true way to actually make sure everybody gets the opportunity to be themselves is truly to live and not live. And our laws should reflect that. Right. And it's going to be an interesting few years. Like I said, we're not going to theorize about the end of the world or the new world or all that stuff, because who the fuck knows. But one of the things I came out in the last few years was everybody lives their own lives. And would I do it the way necessarily you do it? Maybe not. But at the same time, who fucking cares? What matters is that are you happy? Are you happy being who you are? Right. Are you okay with the decisions you've made in your life? Are you at peace with yourself? Right. Most of the rest of it doesn't really fucking matter. Like it really doesn't.
And don't worry about what someone else does. You know, one funny thing is like I'll post videos on TikTok. I hate to, and I did this day. I know, but I did this. I posted a thing. I have a very different view on forgiveness than a lot of people, and I won't get into the whole thing. But Oprah had posted this video about how, you know, the whole cliche of you have to, in order to heal, you have to forgive everyone that hurt you. And I disagree with that. And I won't get into the whole thing because that'll take forever, but I believe you have to forgive. The only person you have to forgive in order to heal is forgive yourself for accepting a behavior that you didn't deserve and that. But I don't believe that you have to forgive everybody. I think sometimes, especially if they would hurt you again or don't regret it, I think that it's empowering to say, I deserve better. And so you don't carry it, but you don't drown in it, but you kind of go, I deserve better. So that's just how I go. So I posted that. And I mean, I don't have a ton of followers, but I've gotten like 95,000 views and a whole bunch of comments but this is the best. Most people are like, thank you. Like, I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying that's not the way for everybody. Some of us need to have this thing of like, I choose not to, and it empowers me. That's just how I feel. And a lot of people have said to me online, thank you. Because they felt so guilty that they couldn't forgive, or they felt bad because they couldn't forgive. And it's for some people, it's just a relief to know that they don't. And again, it's different. I'm not talking about holding resentments. I'm not talking about holding on to anger. I'm just saying it's okay. Like there are people in my life that I've forgiven. There's people who I said, no, I don't forgive you. You did a really shitty thing, but I'm gonna use what I've learned from that experience to move forward. I'm not holding on to it.
So I think the only thing I really disagree with that is the semantics. I see forgiveness more like this. I look at it kind of like, if I forgive somebody, it's not because necessarily I have forgotten what they've done. I think that the semantics is forgiving, forgetting, right?
No, it's not. And I know what you're gonna say, because that's what everyone says. Is you do it for you. You do it for you, not for them. You don't even have to tell them. But I'm telling you, and this is why I'm saying that's great for a lot of people. But for me and for a lot of people that it's even saying I forgive. For me, it feels like a disservice to myself. And so for me, it's me saying I don't want to forgive them. And for some reason that feels so good to me. And it feels, and all I'm saying is that that's one option. But my point is that I posted this, and with all the great kind of whatever, I cannot tell you. And and this is my thing too. Like when you talk about how you have fun with it, I have made so many fun videos in response. The Jesus people, like the religious people who are supposed to be so, Jesus is the way, have been the cruel. Like I posted this, oh my God, is it a month ago now? And I got something today. And I posted a video response. That's all like, I got two women today coming after me telling me, oh, God's going to get you. And one person told me I was going to get cancer, and all of this because of like, first of all, for going against Oprah, and then for going against, for going against God. And it's like, and one person's like, it's like, you're not doing it the Christian way. And I'm like, I'm not Christian. Like, do you? That's not what I have to like, and trying to scare me. And I'm like, why would I be scared of your beliefs? It's like saying, if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to feed you peanuts because I am allergic to them. Like, it's not your fear of your God. You can't scare me with that, because I don't think the same way. But I'm just saying, it's crazy that there are people like, if you want to feel that way, but why come after me? Like, so whatever I believe, I'm not going to go after you if you believe something different, you know?
That's good. That's good. I find, again, I think we could talk for quite a while. We really could. I think so. How about this? We'll agree to disagree on the concept of forgiveness. And right now, right? Sure. But or we'll agree to disagree. I now just from my perspective, I have one of my grandmothers doesn't forgive anything. So I've seen the long term of that. So maybe that's where my biases are coming. But I will say this is what I genuinely do believe. However you choose to do forgiveness, right? It has to be sincere, or it will never. It doesn't work. You can't just forgive. Like even from a Christian standpoint, you can't just forgive somebody, right, and not mean it. It doesn't work, right?
No, your body knows. Your body knows.
No, you hang on. Like, if you're hanging on. I did a podcast about fixing my teeth. My hero, one of the hardest things I ever had to say, and I had to say it to let him go, was to say that in the time I was there, he did the best he could. Because he did. Like, whatever I might think about it, did the best he could. That was so hard for me to say, because there was a part of me that wanted to hold on to that anger. But the only way I was going to free myself from that anger is if I had to acknowledge this. If I didn't, I would still be angry. And it was hard, but I had to do it, and I had to be sincere if I was going to break this hold on me, right? So it has to be, first thing I'm going to say is, it has to be sincere. I don't care what you believe on it. If your forgiveness is not sincere, it's bullshit. It doesn't really matter. To the second point, I have found, like, if people have this idea of how things should be, and if you violate that magical idea they put you in like this magical little box. Truth of the matter is, as you so eloquently put, you got to do what's right for you. Now, whether I agree with you or not, honestly, at the end of the day, is irrelevant. Who the fuck am I? I've talked to you for 100 minutes. I think you're awesome. But that all said, I've only talked to you for 100 minutes. Right?
That's right. That's true.
Right. So
if we had another 100 minutes, this could totally turn.
I don't think so. I actually don't think so. I think if I ever met you wherever you're at right now, if I met you and we sat down and had a drink somewhere, I think we'd get along just fine. Even if we would find other things we disagree on, but I think we're both mature enough adults.
Yes, and isn't that what it comes down to too? Like, that's the best, when you can do that, when you can have a conversation, and I think it's only when you're willing to, like, I was just talking about this with a friend today, I think, where we were saying, like, there are things that I've changed my mind about, like,
sure,
but there are people who won't, and I love that. Like, if I've made mistakes and I thought something, and then somebody who was maybe lived it more or something gave me a different perspective, and I went, okay, you know what? I never thought of it that way. But there are too many people who aren't willing or feel like, oh no, I can't change my view because I've been so, that's the problem.
I have 10 rules to success. I have 10 rules, right? The 9th rule is be detached from all outcomes. Again, this is something this is the pandemic taught me this one. And it was this: people get so attached to this idea of how things are supposed to be and how they're supposed to work. The truth of the matter is, no one gives a shit about that idea. No one. Right? Now, you might think it might work for you, and that's wonderful. If it works for you, fantastic. But what I've learned in this life is, see, my idea and your idea are different. They're same in some things, but they're different in others. And you know what? That is fine. You have, like, I still can't believe you're over 50. Yeah, right. So she's like, and just because of that, I know we're friends forever because I said that. But the thing is, you have 52 years of experience in this life. You have your own ideas of what works and what don't. You have, right? And whatever I may think of your ideas, they're your ideas. I have my own ideas. I've been around for almost 41 years. And I have my own ideas of how the world works. Now, we'll agree on some, we'll disagree on others. But you know what? Once you realize, and this is what I've learned, is that there's so many different ideas of how the world works, then it's easier to detach yourself from the idea that you're right. In fact, I hope I'm not right about a lot of things, because in that case, all right. And that's the thing. Like, once you have that open-mindedness, you can actually again, it's also hard to manipulate you when you have that, because what happens is we're never going to, I mean, I am certain we could probably get into a passionate argument about something.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I'm almost certain on that. But at the same time, when the argument's over, we're good. Whatever.
Yeah,
right.
I agree. Yeah.
Right.
Because I think we'll both listen. I think that's the difference, is that I can have my point, but I'm not going to be sitting here. I would be listening to your point instead of just you're talking and I'm trying to think, what can I say to prove my point more? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's a possibility where I might still disagree with you, but there may be a few things in there that I go, okay, but I get that. Okay, but I get, or at least I understand, or I might understand how you come to your opinion.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care if you agree with me at the end of the day. All I really care about is you understand where I come from.
Exactly.
And that's it. That's all it is. Right. And so you're listening, that my voice matters. Like, these are just really simple little things, right? So if you detach yourself from all outcomes, also it doesn't rock you quite so hard when things go to shit. Yeah, it still sucks sometimes, but it's not going to crash my whole world.
Right.
If things go. As adults, the way you can destroy an adult mind is you destroy the ideas inside that mind. And so the only way to protect yourself from that is realize that these are just ideas, and I may be wrong. And if you can accept that, you will learn, right? You will learn to adapt. Now, some things won't change. I'm 41 and I'm crotchety set in some things, but I am a big enough man to acknowledge that the world is bigger than me.
Yes.
And a lot of people,
and I don't know everything. Yeah.
Oh God, no. Like I learned some things today and something, right? So I mean, that's just how it goes. By the way, I think in particular, and then we'll wrap this up, you'll love my 10th rule of success. You want to know I hear my 10th rule?
Absolutely.
Because I feel this applies to you. If in doubt, have fun.
And I'm going to say, I totally agree. And my thing is, life is short, so dance. Because I dance all the time. That's
right. Dance, sing, shine. Whatever
do
that
it.
is.
And you don't have to be good at it. Just
that's actually the best thing, because then that's when you actually get.
There's no pressure.
Well, that's when you get good, because you're not afraid to learn.
I loved this. I love chatting with you.
Yeah, see, I'm good at this, but don't tell anybody.
I'm not telling. Are you kidding? I'm not gonna tell anybody.
Yeah, nada. So we should probably like plug something here. So do you want to plug your book again?
Oh, yeah.
Do the
pitch.
And
then I'm gonna tell you when my podcast is ready, because I
dip my
foot. So my book is The Good Stripper, a soccer mom's memoir of lies, laughs, and lap dances. It is on Amazon, and it's an audiobook on Audible, but it's Kindle, paperback, Audible. I mean, I have my marciwarhaft.com website, thegoodstripper.com website. I'm very easy to find if someone wants to reach out and be kind. Don't be mean. And then I'll let you know when I start my when I launch my podcast.
No worries.
But yeah, no, I'm so glad that we connected.
Yeah, no, it was. I enjoyed this chat. You were one of my easier interviews. Like I said, you're not afraid to talk yourself.
You just call me easy. Did you just call me easy? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I joke that I'm cheap, but I'm not easy. But I'm not sure if that's actually true. I'm not sure that's actually true. So we'll go with that. For anyone watching, listening, this is my advertising services. I will brand your products or yourselves. I do videos, audios, words, and graphics. The information is right there for anyone that wants to do this. And that will do it for today. Tomorrow is a drink and draw with Shawnee O. She's back for some more. I want to thank everybody watching or everybody listening. So thank you for watching and listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.